I have to confess something. I am no good at tidying up. I have spent my whole life trying to be more like my mother, who has the tidiest house I think I've ever been in. My mother, whose compulsion to sweep the floor is such that she will sometimes begin doing it in the middle of a family gathering. My mother, who loves white walls so much that she cleans hers. I guess you're supposed to do that. I never picked up those habits. There's some combination of always thinking that there is something more interesting to do, and really, there's always something more interesting to do, and my own desire to keep all kinds of little things because, oh, I could use that. I have become almost the polar opposite of my mother and her very clean, nothing on the counters home. Last week, as my wife and I traveled to my parents' house, my mother, terrified, said, I have to let you know, the house is kind of messy. I'm so sorry, it's dirty, I haven't had time. My wife said, that can't be true. And it wasn't. But at our house, there was flour on the counter because, well, it had fallen over when we were trying to get something, and we really didn't have time to clean it up before we left. I am no good at tidying up. I'm no good at tidying up, and for me, every time I go to throw something away, I think, oh, but I could use that for a craft project. In 2020, in the midst of a binge of new craft learning, I kept these spare pieces of heat transfer vinyl because I thought, oh, I'll make those into little bits of confetti and put them on other shirts. I never did that. I have now in my home just 2 bags of spare scrap heat transfer vinyl. I keep things because I think I could do something with that, or because I think, oh no, it would hurt somebody's feelings if I got rid of that, or somebody gave that to me and I can't, or I have some sort of feeling about the thing and then I hold on to it for too long. Books in particular, I can't imagine getting rid of. I have books in my home written by authors I think people shouldn't read. But I bought them and I read them at some point, and now I can't get myself to get rid of them. Suffice to say, I find Marie Kondo's advice to change your life through the magic of tidying up complicated. In fact, when everybody was getting so excited about her book the first time, I couldn't read it. I still haven't actually read it. I've watched only some of the show, but some of what I saw made me think, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's something to only keeping things that bring joy, to not cluttering your life up with every memory you've ever had, or stacks of magazines that you are sure you're going to need some of someday. I get that from my father. My mother will throw things away, even things that she might need. My father will keep stacks and stacks of car magazines on the off chance that he needs a reference from one of them someday in the future. What he doesn't know is that she throws his car magazines away anyway, because he's never going to go and check those references, and neither am I. I'm not going to go back to those books. I'm not going to use that spare heat transfer vinyl. Nobody is going to be hurt if I get rid of clothing that doesn't fit anymore, or things that I never use. And if they are, well, probably they'll get over it. So Marie Kondo says that the best way to choose what to keep and what to throw away is to take each item in one's hand and ask, does this spark joy? If it does, keep it. If not, dispose of it. This is not only the simplest, but also the most accurate yardstick by which to judge. Well, it's not spring yet, and so I have not gotten into the spring cleaning, but maybe when I do, I will pick things up one by one and ask if they spark joy. Because I might not care about tidying up all that much. It might not bother me if my house is a little chaotic. I might like my stacks of books. But it is worth it to pay attention to joy. It is worth it to focus on which things in our lives bring us something, and to say goodbye to the things that don't bring us anything at all anymore. I've been practicing choosing joy in a different way. But before I tell you about that, I have to tell you a little bit about the household that I live in now. So I was raised in Northeast Ohio. I was an only child, and as you've heard, my mother keeps a pretty immaculate home. I live now in North Hollywood, a neighborhood of Los Angeles, with my wife and my brother by choice, someone who some of you might know. Gregory Boyd is his name. And I'm the only white person who lives in my house, and that is important to my day-to-day existence in a number of ways. And it's really taught me a lot of things about how we can make choices together that make everybody safer and freer and more full of joy. So we've been in this house, this very small 2-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles together for the better part of the last 2 years. And we have developed a lot of little sayings that get us through. Another thing to know about us is that all of us are people who will say yes a little bit too much. We all want to do everything we can do, take on every project that's possible, and we're all at a place in our lives where the things that we could do are vast and frequently offered. So we've come up with a saying, a way to guide ourselves towards good choices about which things we will and won't do. We ask each other, does this bring Black joy? In our house, that phrase is the joy test. Now, that doesn't mean that we never do anything just because it makes me happy. What it means is that we're going to choose work and life in a direction that makes all of us more free. It's not actually about any individual person's joy, but it's about doing things that lead to greater liberation, that make more joy possible in the world. It's about approaching life from an angle where we say, when Black people are free and safe, then we are all free and safe. That when marginalized people get to live into their joy, then all of us have more space to live into joy. Sometimes we expand it. Does this bring Black queer joy? Everybody in my house is queer. More of us are trans than not. So we look at where we can support the rest of our communities, where we can support one another, where we can support our friends and our chosen family and our biological family in making decisions that are expansive, that let everybody have a little more. Here's an example. Because I am now your associate minister for pastoral care, we have a little bit more income in our house. And I was having a real hard time with the fact that I wanted to spend a not small chunk of our money every week going to the farmer's market and spending way more money on produce and other food items than we used to. We talked about it, and we passed it through our joy test. Does it bring Black joy? Does it bring marginalized people joy? Does it make the world more expansive? And you know, it turns out it does. Because when I go to the farmer's market, my wife and I go together and we take a nice walk, and there is joy there. And the woman who sells the seafood that we sometimes buy, well, she and my wife have great conversations about how they do their hair. And that adds community. We've made friends with the gay men who sell us bagels and the people of color who run the cheese shop that we like and the people who sell us popsicles that my wife and I like to eat on the way home, even if it is too cold to do so. Choosing to go to the farmer's market to spend our little bit of extra money or a little bit of our extra money on something that is community oriented, that increases our ability for connection, that brings us food that is more nourishing, more delicious. These things bring Black joy, bring queer joy, bring trans joy. These things bring space in the world for something else. One of the something else's that this brought space for was a conversation between one of my uncles and my wife at a family Christmas event last week. We've been really cautious about COVID and have barely seen anyone, so our social skills are not where they used to be. And I hadn't seen my whole family in about 6 years for a bunch of reasons. So my wife and I are at this event with my mother's family, and somehow my wife winds up in a conversation with my uncle, my mom's second oldest sibling, and a man who, if I'm being honest, I don't think I've ever had a whole conversation with. And my wife is new to my family. We just got married this summer. But this man from Northeast Ohio who has never lived outside of my hometown, and my wife from Oakland who lives with me in Los Angeles, had a long conversation about how the food from the grocery store doesn't taste right anymore, and how he grows his own food in his backyard and we go to the farmer's market. What an opportunity for connection. I know it sounds little mundane, but what an opportunity for connection. What an opportunity to talk about some things that we all have in common, right? We all eat food. We all notice that factory farmed and mass produced food does not taste as good, does not feel as good, does not nourish us the same way as food from the ground that we have spent time building relationship with, whether we've built relationship with the person who sells it to us or with the ground itself. What an opportunity for people from worlds that might not interact otherwise to get to share and find that, oh, we're actually pretty much the same, right? They are different in ways that mean something, but there is a similarity, a tie. And now my uncle knows that in California, we have year-round farmers markets. And one of the reasons we spend so much to live here is to go to year-round farmers markets with really good food. And my wife knows that if you live in Ohio, well, you might not be able to get good Thai food very easily, but you could have space in your yard to grow your own food. And now my wife and my uncle, people who would not have encountered each other otherwise, who might not have had much to talk about otherwise, have this shared experience, and my family is more connected. My biological family, my family of choice, make more sense to each other. And that makes the world different. That opens up possibility. So as you dream your way through these dark days of winter, as you try to decide how you will be oriented in the new year, maybe ask yourself, do these things bring Black joy? Do they bring queer joy? Do they bring marginalized joy? Do they bring space for more possibility? Does this get us all freer? Make something new in the world? It's a good question. Maybe by the time it's spring, I'll throw some things away. Maybe I won't. We're going to find out based on following the joy. I wish this for you as well. Amen. And blessed be.